about 11 p.m. Mr. Kyari says this is certainly a great loss to his immediate family, the NNPC, our country, Nigeria, OPEC, and the global energy community. Earlier on Tuesday, Mr. Barkindo had been honored by President Muhammadu Buhari at the State House in Abuja for his work at OPEC. The president then had described him as a worthy ambassador of the country. His tenure as OPEC Secretary General was scheduled to end at the end of this month. Let's talk to our energy correspondent, Olu Phillips, who joins us live from Abuja. Good morning to you, Olu. This is certainly a tragedy and is coming at a very, very challenging time for OPEC, especially because it is in the midst of certain challenges which it is facing. What more are you learning about Mr. Barkindo's passing?
Laddie, good morning to you and good morning to everyone. I haven't had much sleep since yesterday evening, late night yesterday, when this news started filtering in that the man I interviewed yesterday evening, strong. When he saw me, he shook my hands because we've had a lot of cooperation between Channels Television and OPEC. Laddie, you can attest to this. I mean, you've covered the industry, the energy industry, for many, many years, and you worked also with Barkindo. I took over from you to continue this work, and we've worked closely with Barkindo here on Channels Television. He gave us an interview yesterday evening, which I conducted, and promised to have a more sit-down, exclusive interview between himself and us, as far as his days, his years in OPEC is concerned, his work is concerned. Recall also that this interview should have held in Vienna, but for exigencies of his travels and his handing over ceremonies and his handing over to the new OPEC Secretary General, a Kuwaitian, who's also a diplomat, all of that has not happened. We moved the interview to Houston. It was also a very tough time. We couldn't have it in Houston. We just had a sideline with him. And all Mr. Barkindo has lived for, especially in the twilight of his days at OPEC, is to see a stability in the energy market and supply. Barkindo brought to this sector and to this industry and to the global economy the stability that has never been seen before. Remember that this industry has been hit by two cycles: the downturn in 2015 and 2016, and the pandemic in 2019, when oil prices fell. As we were in Vienna in that early February of 2020, when oil prices plummeted to about $47. Today, oil is selling for as of yesterday, $115 to the barrel. And that has to do with a lot of the galvanizing and the pulling together of everyone who needed to help this market stabilize. For instance, in 2016, he initiated a move and a strategy to what you call the OPEC cooperation with non-OPEC members and non-producing countries to come together and see how the market can be supplied and how production can be stabilized. So whilst a lot of people had seen OPEC as an international organization of cartels that just fix prices, Barkindo has changed that narrative, to become an international organization that is now being seen as a very critical part of world economy. Look at what's happening in the world today as regards energy supply. Today, the statistics are not looking good. 30% loss in terms of revenue, in terms of investment in production globally. 1.5 million barrels of oil lost every year, daily, owing to supplies and supply shortfalls. Barkindo, in his wisdom, has also been asking that geopolitics and economy and politics do not interfere in energy issues. So, for instance, he's a very strong advocate of what is happening, for instance, in Venezuela and in Iran. He's been pushing to see how these people can come back into the supply market and not be affected by the politics of what's going on in their region. So, for instance, we're losing close to 2 million barrels from Iran, almost that numbers from Venezuela. Today's supply receipts from the U.S. producers are not enough to cover up, for instance, for the shortfall that we are seeing that is being exacerbated by the war between Russia and Ukraine. And you can see that he's one Secretary General that appeals to every member and every representative at OPEC. Once he's at the saddle, you will see the Novaks of this world from Russia. You will see the oil minister from Saudi Arabia agreeing. Remember that Russia is a major supplier. Remember that Saudi Arabia is also a major supplier. And most times and sometimes they do not agree because they have the power of supply. These are people that can produce crude at less than $10 and still make humongous profit. These are people that turn out about 3 million barrels a day without batting an eyelid. But when the market is oversupplied, Barkindo has the willing powers. He's got that oil that has the way of speaking to these authorities, speaking to these oil countries to cut down on supply and make sure that stability is equated with what a good pricing in terms of oil per barrel. Remember that Nigeria also depends on this in terms of its budgeting allocation and budgeting planning, benchmarking on what the price of crude is, and all of that. What he has brought to OPEC cannot be said in one program. This is a man that joins OPEC.
I actually wish that we could see more visuals of Mohammed Barkindo. We have quite a lot of material on him, which I expect that our producers will put up even as you speak, Olu. That's why I stepped in. We have him at the meeting with the president yesterday in Abuja, which would be his last public outing before this tragic event. And of course, before that, he was at the NOG of 2022, where he indeed, and so he's been around. But I would want to ask you, do we know anything about what will now happen? Because, of course, having passed on, we do know that Mohammed Sanusi Barkindo is a colossus in the energy, in the oil and gas industry. His tenure, in fact, hasn't ended. It was due to end at the end of this month. That's at the end of July, when he was then expected to take up an appointment at the Atlantic Council. But do we know what is to happen? Will he, for example, be buried today? What are you hearing?
I've spoken to a friend and confidant in OPEC who also traveled with him, Mr. Hassan, and the OPEC family is in great shock. As a matter of fact, reading some messages from them, I'm listening to them. They wish it was a mix-up in terms of names or something, but hey, what can we do? The latest information I'm hearing is that he'll be buried today, barring any last-minute changes. He'll be buried today at 4 p.m. in Yola. Channels Television is keeping a tap on that. We'll see how we can bring visuals and live visuals from that burial if it's not a private one. But this man is a global citizen. Barkindo is a colossus. Barkindo cannot be discussed. That Barkindo is an encyclopedia of world diplomacy. Barkindo will be missed. I will miss him. Channels family will miss him. The energy community will miss him. The global community will miss him. And his tenure is not over. When we spoke last in Houston in March and in May, he told me, I'll be back. I'll be back in July to attend the NOG. We can have our conversations. And by end of July, I'll travel back to Vienna for the handover to the new OPEC Secretary General, who was elected sometime in the first quarter of this year. So, indeed, as it were, in his capacity yesterday, he was still, unfortunately, Ladi, we're using the word was now for yes. Barkindo. He was still the serving Secretary General of OPEC, the 28th or 26th, if I'm not mistaken, of the Secretary Generals. He will be missed. Ladi,
he will.
And
He will. He will. He will indeed. Olu, thank you for the perspective. Please keep informed, keep on top of the story. We'll be getting back to you throughout the course of the day.